questions that my students compiled the other day. And we're going to start with Mr. Noel. And Mr. Noel, my students wanted to know what it's like being at the Battle of Iwo Jima. What was it like being there at such an important turning point in history?
What was it like being at Iwo Jima?
At the time, well, the day before Iwo Jima, we was briefed saying we was going in and we was going to take over a little 8-square-mile island. And we spoke between ourselves, said, why do we fool with a little small island and we feel like it is not even inhabited that much? The reasoning I think she gave before was we needed the airstrip. We were sending bombers from Guam to Japan, and it was probably over 1,000 miles. And when they would go up and bomb Japan, they needed an airstrip on their return if they was in need of fuel or repairs. And Iwo Jima was about halfway between Guam and Japan, and it was one of the first islands or possessions of Japan. And we thought it would be a breeze, but to our dismay, we had learned later, over 20,000, I'm thinking, casualties from our side. Can you imagine that many people? But I was looking out over the crowd and I was saying, I come to a school and here I said I'm older than the teachers. But I doubt if many of you, I didn't think they would even remember Iwo Jima, but it seems the lady had a good presentation.
Yes, she did.
And what made Iwo important was this flag raising.
Oh, that's one of the questions the students also wanted to ask. Did
That
you know anybody
flag was raised atop Mount Suribachi. When I was here before, I was telling them D-Day and D+4. They was asking me what that meant. I thought everyone would know D-Day was the day, first day of invasion. D+4 was when this flag was raised on the mountain. And to climax that the second large flag, the one in this famous picture, came from the ship I was on. We were sitting at the base of the mountain. I was on a seagoing landing craft as big as a football field, about 50 feet wide and over 300 feet long. And they needed a larger flag to raise on the mountain. And we was closest to the base of the mountain, D+4. They came aboard and we furnished this flag that was made famous by the photographer Rosenthal.
Did you know, another question from the students was, did you know anybody personally that was in that picture?
Did you know any of the people personally?
No,
the flag raisers?
No, I don't. They are most all Marines, and we did take Marines and their equipment in, and they needed heavy artillery, D+1, the second day of battle, and we went in and unloaded most of our equipment their equipment, the Marines and their heavy artillery. And we had to back off, and then we made several trips from the larger ships to the beach, taking in other personnel and equipment.
His question was, did you know any of the people there?
No, I was telling him we took the Marines in, and it was one pharmacist there. I did not know any of them, no.
Okay. All right, the next question we have is for Mr. Silcox. And I teach sophomores, and many of them are 15 years of age. And you signed up, you volunteered to serve in World War II at the age of 15. And Mr. Silcox, they were wanting to know, what were your thoughts, and why did you do that?
Well, I was 15-year-old. I was 15-year-old, and I knew just about as much as anybody and so forth. And
You knew just as much as anybody, you said.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I couldn't get along with the principal at school at Trapville High School.
Can y'all hear him okay? He said he couldn't get along with his principal at the high school. So, that's a really good excuse to go to World War II. I thought.
So I had, not,
Make sure that mic's on. Okay.
all right.
Is that better?
Hello.
That's much better. There we go. So you couldn't get along with your principal, huh?
Yeah, and I just quit school to get away from it, and I went to Baltimore then to get a job, and I found out the job there was just like it were here. Nobody wanted a 15-year-old to work and at anything. So I had a cousin that lived in Baltimore, and he had been in the Army and was discharged completely out of the Army. I think he was in some accident. But anyhow, he knew the source to get me in, to get in the Army and enlist. And I got in there, no trouble.
And they didn't ask you anything about your age when you got there?
On the 5th of May.
Okay.
And then went right through all the process of orientations and all that stuff, the shots, more shots than I knew anybody could even hold. And then we were going to load out on May the 18th to go to Fort Knox, Kentucky, that's basic training. Big old duffel bag packed, about that big around so high. Sitting there, and they called my name, and he said, step over here in this line over here. And I couldn't imagine what that was because the rest of them was going on to the troop train. And after we got all the people on the train, come back to us, and they told us about 6 of us, I think, that was lined up there, different ones going to different places. And turned around there and said, Silcox said, you're going home.
So they sent you home.
They said, now.
And
That's 13 days.
so you served 13 days in the
Yes,
war.
sir.
You got all your
And
shots, and then you didn't get to serve.
I got paid for 13 days, and that was something like $8 and some few cents. And
Did y'all hear that? Okay. You got $8 for serving in World War II for 13 days. So,
it's $50 a month for base pay.
okay.
Big money.
Big money. So you were also in Korea.
Korea.
So you went back to high school, as I understand
I
it.
went back, finished, got a new principal. And he was on my side. So he nursed me on through high school. And I got my draft call from my friends and neighbors, sent me a telegram. So then I went back to Fort Meade, the same barracks, the same headquarters building, same mess hall, same building to peel potatoes in.
And you would be 21 then, right? You were 21?
No, I was 19.
19, okay.
Yeah. Anyhow, I got through that, went to Fort Knox, went through 16 weeks of basic training and 4 weeks of leadership school, and then got a 6-day leave to come home and get back to Chicago to meet a troop train to go to Seattle to catch a ship going to Korea.
And there your job in Korea was transporting wounded? Was it transporting wounded? Is that what you did? You transported soldiers?
Well, it was on a troop ship.
Yes.
We
What
did land.
was your job in Korea?
Well, driving a personnel carrier. I got pictures of it here for anybody, because these 4 pictures right here, I couldn't explain in 4,000 words. This was a personnel carrier I drove. This one is loaded with wounded. Right here. This one is our emergency room, which you need to take a good look at it. And this was a helicopter sent the bad ones on back to the hospital ship. So, now I can't tell you no more.
Okay.
And
Now,
I don't know, I would love to do some of it again, but not under the same conditions that I was under there.
all right. Now, Mr. Cassell he stayed stateside during World War II.
Right.
You were in the Tidewater area, Virginia Beach, Norfolk, that area.
Right.
But you had a crucial role to play there as well.
Maintain the records of all the servicemen in the 5th Naval District.
And that involved quite a bit of work then, didn't it?
A lot
Can
of
you tell the
paperwork.
students about that, what type of things you did, sir?
Right. Well, stateside boys had to furnish whatever they needed over there. And we maintained their records. I acted as the secretary to the personnel officer of the Naval Air Station from 1944 to 46. Then I came out, went to American University. Then the Korean War broke. I volunteered as a recruiting officer, and I served with Governor Holton. He was a submarine officer, but when he came out of service in 1946, he stayed a reserve officer, and he and I maintained the recruiting office in Roanoke. So Holton, he appointed me when he became governor to head up the welfare reform program for the state. That's what I did as a civilian after the war.
Very good. Now, I have some more questions, but I also wanted to involve the audience in this. Do any of you have questions that you would like to ask? And I could relate them to these gentlemen. I have others, plenty of others. Did anybody have something now that we've met all 3 of these men? Did anybody want to ask something? Okay. All right, this was I thought this was an interesting question. 2 of you went to high school in this county, and there was an Eagle Rock High School and a Troutville High School.
Fincastle.
All 3 of you go to high school in Botetourt?
I went to Eagle Rock.
You went to Eagle Rock High School.
What high school did you go to? Fincastle High School.
Fincastle High School. So the students wanted to know, what was life like at Fincastle High School and Eagle Rock High School? Could you go first, Mr. Cassell?
There were 38 graduated in my class. So that's how big we were. I was the treasurer of the class. And Lester Keith's daughter over here is my age. She's still living. The 3 of us, class of 1944, still living. We're all 97. Yeah.
So what was your best subject? Another question they had, what was your best subject in high school? What was your best subject in high school?
What was your best subject in high school? Anything but math.
All right, for Mr. Noel, they wanted to know what was your time like at your local Botetourt County High School?
What was your time like at high school?
Eagle Rock High School, the year before I graduated, the Japanese had bombed Pearl Harbor. And it was pretty certain that our country would soon be at war. I graduated in '42, and I was on my way to boot camp on my birthday the next year, heading to Sampson, New York. But the school, you asked was what it was like and so forth. It was all we knew. And everything we learned was right there. There's some old adages about people said they had to quit their 8th grade in school to keep from passing their daddy. That didn't happen in ours. That was just a joke.
Okay.
But they, and I had left before they tore the school down. Some people said they had to tear the school down to get me out and so forth, but that happened many years later.
Okay. Another question they had was about military food. And what, I'll go this with Mr. Silcox. What was standard military food when you were in Korea and the time you were in World War II? What did y'all eat? What was standard food?
What type of food was standard food? What did y'all eat in the military?
Well, on a good night, we had liver.
Liver?
Beef liver.
And that was a good night.
And it was green. It was good.
All right, green
And
liver,
the
okay.
next best thing we had was sea rations.
And what were the sea rations?
Well, beans, weenies, and the corned beef hash, hashed corned beef, little old cans. But it's 4 or 5 different varieties there. And we had the canned heat to heat them with. And I had a black boy was my machine gunner, and we bunked together. And we ate out of the same can, different spoons, but dip out whatever, and it was edible,
Okay.
and it was very good.
Fairly good then. All right. And Mr. Cassell? What kind of food did you have when you were in the service?
Well,
Go
let
ahead.
me tell you about, I don't know whether the students should remember Hee Haw, the show called Hee Haw. Well, I was in the Navy with string bean. The string bean was almost 7 feet tall. And he got a convenience of the government discharge because we didn't have a bunk for him. They put 2 mattresses on the floor. The string bean was in there, and I've also they know Eichenberry's store. Well, Gwen's father was in the Navy with me. And so it's a coincidence we run into these things, but String Bean used to entertain us outside of our barracks. He could play anything with a string on it. And he sang dirty songs.
So, next question. And we'll move right along from the dirty song thing. Another question my students had was, how did each one of you men feel when the war was finally over? What were your thoughts when we won in Europe and in the Pacific, when the war was finally over? Mr. Cassell, what were your thoughts about when the war was finally over?
What were your thoughts when the war was finally over?
It was a good event to get it over with, yes. Is that what you're talking about?
What were your personal feelings, is what the students
I was
said.
happy. Very happy. I wanted to come home. But I came home, and like a lot of the veterans, we played for about a year. I even went up to the airport and took flight lessons on a paper code till my mother got on my back and said, "You need to go to school," and I did.
You see, we went back to school.
Right.
All right, Mr. Noel, you were obviously in some heavy combat. What were your thoughts when the victory in the Pacific was achieved?
When the war was over,
Yes, sir.
you know, when the war was over, I'm not sure exactly where I was. But I know our ship was loaded and we was ready to go and on an invasion of Japan. We was going to leave the Philippines heading for Japan. They gave us a U-turn.
So you would have been part of the invasion force of...
And
My
they
goodness.
said, you have to hold up. They had dropped an atomic bomb on Japan, and you could not go in there for several months. So after it did clear, we did go to Japan, and it was devastation all the way.
So you saw Hiroshima and
Yes.
the destruction there.
Did you see Hiroshima or Nagasaki?
I saw both of them.
So you saw the destruction at the
Yes.
both of them. So you were on the way there when the A-bombs were dropped.
We were starting out of Philippines, and they said, hold up.
Wow. So I guess when my students were discussing that, their feeling was that the United States had to drop those bombs to keep so many Americans from dying over there. And Donnie, you're nodding your head with that. You might have lost your dad there then.
Yes.
So I guess y'all were very relieved when that happened then, right?
When was the war over? 46?
45.
September 45,
September 45.
September 2nd.
All right, thank you for that. That's a pretty powerful testimony. And Mr. Silcox, you saw two wars end. What were your feelings when?
Well, I'm very happy that World War II ended the way it did. I felt like that y'all probably wouldn't ever have to go, because that was supposed to end all wars.
That was the war to end all war. That was,
Philippines.
yes.
But then, Brother Truman sent us to into Korea on police action. It was not a war, not declared nothing. And the war itself was over mid 51. Because it started at 50, Korea started at 50. About mid to late 51, the DMZ come in effect. And then when I went in there, the DMZ was in effect. But I was stationed on an outpost, a listening post. And we could detect movement from Seoul to Pyongyang. And North Korea didn't like it, because and that post Harriet was supposed to be held at any cost. And it was. And then on June the 3rd of 53, I got my points built up. I was coming out of there. And I was in Incheon on June the 10th, ready to ship out and come home. When they threw this is to be corrected, anywhere from 2,500 to 9,000 Chinese in on Outpost Harry. Well, they wiped out 283 of my company.
And you were there during that battle.
Yeah. And then after that, and I didn't know that until the September issue of VFW magazine. It was article in there on it. And I got it and I went to after I found out about it, I found out that it was a book on it, written by James Evans. He was a first lieutenant, which was commander on the post at the time. And I knew him very well. We drank beer together, we played poker together. In other words, he was an officer and we respected that, but he was one of us. And I don't know, that was a good part of it. You know, we were free to do just about anything we wanted to, but nowhere to go, nothing to do. And as of today, the peace treaty with Korea is not signed.
That's correct, yes. Yeah.
And as far as I know, Outpost Harry in June the 10th to the 12th was the last major battle in Korea.
So you were in the last major battle in Korea, as far as you know?
I have a question.
Yes.
I know Donnie's a veteran and this gentleman here, I'd like to know when they served in the military, just as I know we're honoring these three, but I'd also like to know when they served.
All right, Dr. Anthony, could you pass the,
Yes.
Dr. Anthony grew up, I grew up across the street from him when I was
Okay?
out in Salem, Virginia. So I've known him for a long time. Go ahead. When did you serve, Dr. Anthony?
Okay, I was a little too young for World War II. But after World War II, something else came along. I haven't heard the term yet today, but it was called the Cold War. How many of you have heard of the Cold War?
We studied that in our English class, and they studied
Very
history.
good.
Yeah.
Well, obviously after World War II, the Soviet Union was desirous of conquering lots of land and so forth. So a proxy war was fought between the superpowers. Korea came along, sir. My father had been in World War I, and those of you who have studied World War I know what the troops underwent during that war. We talk about mud, trenches, exploding artillery shells, all that. So my father told me one thing: son, you will not join the Army. So we enlisted in the Naval Reserve. And I believe you'll find that during World War II, most of the people serving in the U.S. Navy were in fact Naval Reservists. They had USNR after their names. So I actually joined the Naval Reserve in 1951. Did not go on active duty until 1954. I served on active duty between 1954 and 1956, and then remained with the U.S. Naval Reserve. My experience with the Naval Reserve actually was formally ended by a document dated March of 1992. So, about 40 years with the Naval Reserve. I'm a very slow learner.
And Donnie, you were in the military too. You want to share?
Yes, I was, thank you. I was in 1969 to 72 and served during the Vietnam era, but was not in Vietnam. I served aboard the USS Forrestal for 2 med cruises in the Mediterranean, and then came back and was stationed at the Naval Air Station at Oceana and Virginia Beach until I got out.
The bell is about to ring, and thank you all for coming. We're going to start with some questions here that my students came up with, but I also want folks from other classes to feel free to ask questions and all, and I'll get some opportunities for that. The first question that I have is for Mr. Noel, who was at Iwo Jima. And sir, what was it like being in combat in such an important battle in World War II?
What was it like being in combat in an important battle like Iwo?
That's hard to describe after 75 years. I was just one of the crew, and our mission was to press forward.
And what was your job on the ship that you were on? What kind of ship were you on there?
What type of ship and what was your job?
The ship I was on was a seagoing landing craft. It was about the size of a football field, and the bottom was about as flat. The bottom was about as flat as a shoebox, but yet it was seagoing, and you can imagine something flat hitting the waves. But we could go up to the beach, and we could open the bow doors and drop the ramp, and the ship had no name. It was just a number, and they called it LST, Landing Craft Ship Tanks. Our major cargo would be tanks. We could haul Sherman tanks, about 6 or 8 on our tank deck. And we went in to Iwo Jima. You're asking about the type of ship and so forth. We was called in to Iwo Jima on D-Day +1. When I was here before, the people wanted to know what D-Day was. D-Day was the first day of invasion. You had D-Day, H-hour, and whatever. We went in the second day of battle. They needed the heavy artillery that was our cargo. And we took the Marines and all of their equipment in, like I said, D+1. And we made several other trips unloading the larger ships and going back to the beach, and we were sitting there at D+4, and that's when they came aboard and wanted a large flag to put up on top of the mountain that it became famous by the photographer Rosenthal. And my question was to the two young folks that had this as an assignment, what was their interest in this?
Well, he has a question.
Rachel and
Forrest. What was your interest? What was your interest in this? He's asking.
I mean, I think it was such a great battle. I was very interested in just how big the ships were and how many, and just them lining the shores and just the interest of what happened.
She was saying that their major interest was how they lined the shores and what was going on. And you were depositing tanks there, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was crucial
Tanks and artillery.
Tanks and artillery,
okay.
and to attack the enemy.
I failed to give you my duties on the ship.
Okay, let's have it. Yeah, what were your duties?
My rank was a motor machinist. I was assigned to the engine room when we was underway or at sea. And when we had general quarters, I was on a 20-millimeter gun. And like I said, our duty was down in the engine rooms, and a lot of times we never knew what was going on.
Unless
But
they called
like
general
when
quarters.
we hit the beach, I was in general quarters and on the gun.
All right. Now, there were, of course, others, another question from the students was, what did Mr. Cassell do? He served stateside in Tidewater area, Virginia Beach, in Norfolk area. And you had a crucial role to play, even though you weren't overseas. Could you tell the students what your job was that was so important for the servicemen themselves?
Yeah, I was the secretary to the personnel officer of the Naval Air Station from 1944 to 1966. But I also left to go in the Navy on D-Day, on June the 6th, and I was 17 years old. My father had to sign for me. I didn't lie about my age, so they already had two brothers in the Navy, and mother was trying to hold me back. But anyhow, Dad signed for me, and I went to Camp Perry, left Roanoke, and on D-Day for Williamsburg, I went to Camp Perry. And as I told the group before, I'm sure they know the Eichenberry store. I was in boot camp with Gwen Eichenberry's father, and also in boot camp with a comedian that you all knew in Hee-Haw called String Bean. String Bean was killed, as most of you might know if you remember Hee-Haw. But anyhow, as I said, I was a secretary to the personnel officer.
And you kept the records for the men.
I kept the records, and when you get discharged, all the data that is compiled on the back of what we call a DD-214. And if you apply for a job anywhere, you better have that DD-214 if you're a veteran.
That was one of your major jobs?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, Mr. Silcox, one of the things the students wanted to know is why you volunteered to enter World War II at the age of 15. And of course, most 10th graders at the school are 15. And he had a very interesting story about why he volunteered so young. I think you didn't like your principal, you said earlier today.
Didn't say it again.
I think you said earlier that one of the reasons you volunteered at age 15 to go to World War II is you didn't like your principal.
Go back.
Why did you volunteer at 15?
Well, I couldn't get along with the principal at school. That was number one. Number two, I couldn't find a job that paid over 50 cents an hour, so I had a cousin that lived in Baltimore, and I talked to him. I went up there to look at a job, look for a job, and he said he could get me one, but got up there, same thing as here. And I saw all these soldiers walking around town and all like that, and I thought, well, that might not be too bad. And I said something to him about it. He said, well, I can get you in there. He got me in on May the 5th of 1945, and on May the 18th, and 13 days later, they sent me home. They found out I was 15 years old. And World War II was coming to an end, and they wasn't taking everything. If it had been earlier, I could have stayed in there. But all in all, I come back home, and I was out for a year and a half, and I went back to high school and finished up for graduating. And then I was drafted and went to Korea. And that's about the size of it, just everything just fell in place. And in Korea, the good part of my job there and my company's job was dependent on an outpost. which was a listening, observation and listening post that covered an area from Seoul, Korea to Panmunjom, the capital of North Korea, which to protect movement in the valleys and so forth there, and they didn't like it, so they decided to throw, they said 9,000, but I don't know that that's the actual figure, on the company. And I had left the company on June the 3rd, of 53 to come home. I was in Incheon waiting to board ship on June the 10th when they threw the 9,000 Chinese in on the outpost. They didn't lose the outpost, but the outpost was to be held at any cost, bar none. And that's in the book published. And I found out about it, and all this happened. They told us that the company had been hit, but they didn't have any detail on it. And on September the 10th issue of VF Magazine of 1961, I believe it was, the article on the outpost and so forth being hit. So that got me interested in it. So I was at the VA hospital one day and I said something about it. And the lady told me there that they had a book out on it. And the book was written by a commander, Lieutenant Evans, that was on the outpost at the time it was hit. And I knew him personally. We drank beer together, we played poker together. In other words, being an officer, he's supposed to stood his own ground, but he was right in there with us because he just made the remark that, we're here together. You know better, I know better than you, and you know better than I am. So we got along pretty good. But he wrote the book, and the book was endorsed by John Eisenhower, that's Ike's son, which was commander of the 3rd Infantry Division in Korea at that time. And when Mike was over there, I think it was in February of 53, he said, I'm going to end the war. My company, well, no, the sergeants in my company defended Ike while he was there. And they got all polished up, had the yellow scarf on and all the badge work they could put on a uniform. And they were dressed in a Class A uniform. The rest of us in fatigues. But anyhow, we come out of there, and it's unmerciful what happened. Is 283 men was killed of my company.
283 men were killed in your company. And I think you said that was the last major battle of Korea.
Yeah, and the whole thing was, a lot of people don't know that war is rough, at any way you look at it. But you can make it what it is. Because I'm here to tell you, I survived.
Great answer.
I didn't take any chances. The only chance I took was went on R&R to Japan, and I loaded my AWOL bag up with whiskey, took it back in there.
You took it back
to
with
the
whiskey?
troops, which
Yes.
we could get one can of beer a week, and a pack of cigarettes a week.
So you went AWOL with whiskey?
Well,
No, he had his AWOL bag.
And it was good whiskey. Got it in Japan.
342.
But anyhow, the worst part of the whole ordeal was coming back, and I don't know, I had about 8/5 in that AWOL bag.
8/5.
8/5.
Okay.
And I was crossing the area, maybe as wide as the state frontier, which was up plains. And creek over here and the trenches over here. and I was about midway, and there was a crater here, which was a zeroing place in for their mortar. And I was walking along there, and I was kind of moving pretty fast too. I heard like that, and when you hear that, you hit the ground. Well, 120 millimeter mortar hit in that crater hole, and I made a dive for that crater and missed it. When it went off, I raised about that high off the ground and knocked my breath out every when I hit the ground. And I laid there like I was dead till I got my breath, and my heart braked to the trenches and didn't break in.
You didn't break any of the whiskey then? Okay, that was the...
But I was just so good there.
All right, you didn't tell that story first block, so that...
Even down the officers joined in on us with it.
All right, another question that we had was that, and I learned this first block, that Mr. Noel was on his way to Japan when the atomic bombs were about to be dropped, or had been dropped. Donnie, could you phrase that question to your dad?
What's your question?
What happened when y'all were about to go and invade Japan and you
They put us on hold. We was loaded and had the Marines and everything aboard, and we was in the Philippines, and we was going to invade Japan, and we got the message to hold off, and we had to wait a couple of months before we could go into Japan. And thinking back, we did not get to go into Tokyo Harbor right off. We went to the next harbor up, Nagasaki and Sasebo, and thinking back, they was going to sign the peace treaty aboard the, Missouri? USS Missouri, and possibly they didn't want any other smaller ships there. So we went in the harbor above, and I might have told you the story before. We was there at anchor, and I looked across and I saw a larger ship, and I asked what it was, and they said it was a cruiser. I said, my next door neighbor down here at Eagle Rock is on the USS Mobile. They said, that's the USS Mobile. Halfway around the world, his ship was in the same harbor with me. I asked permission and got to go visit him aboard his ship.
Very
Ethan Rogers. I don't know whether any of you know any Rogers from Eagle Rock or not.
So the takeaway point, right, Donnie, was that the dropping of the A-bombs kept your dad from being part of an invasion force in Japan.
Yes.
Which explains why you're likely here today, doesn't it?
Yes.
So, before I continue with questions from my two classes, do any of you from the audience have a question for these men? Would anybody like to ask a question?
Actually, I had a question for the students. What would it be like for you right now to be called upon by your country to go overseas and defend the country's freedom at your age right now? Because that's how old they were, very close to your same age when they served in World War II.
It's a sobering thought, isn't it?
What's his question?
All right. Anybody have a question or comments about anything before I continue? So, another question I had from the young people, and I'll just go across here, was what were movies or singers or entertainment forms that you particularly liked? Were there certain movies that you remember seeing that you liked, or certain singers or certain forms of entertainment that you enjoy?
I'm sorry, I'm not hearing you.
What type of movies or singers or entertainment did you remember and particularly like that was popular during
That time.
World War II?
Well, Bob Hope came to our shows, and matter of fact, he brought the Andrews sisters with him one time to the Naval Air Station, and I recently returned from New Orleans, where we have the World War II monument, and they had some girls to imitate the Andrews sisters, which I think they did a better job than the Andrews sisters.
The Andrews Sisters' famous song was Boogie.
Yeah, back to the thing. So, but as we sit here, and I think I can speak for the rest of them, we are honored to be here for you students.
Yes, we are.
It's an honor for us.
Mr. Noel, what forms of entertainment did you especially enjoy regarding movies or music or things you'd like to go out and do?
What type of movies or singers or entertainment do you recall that you liked?
A dance style perhaps from the time period?
Dance steps or any of that type of thing?
Oh, for many years, my wife and I was in Western square dancing
You were a square dancer.
Yeah, but that was after the war.
after the war.
He's speaking of during the war.
During the war, you know, if we wasn't in the battle zone, we would have a movie for the all the individuals that wasn't on duty or watch, and I couldn't tell you the first movie that we did see, but they had to be old, you know. And when we went to New Orleans, they had some ladies down there supposedly to be the Andrews sisters, which was
Another Andrews sister.
a team of 3 during World War II. And they came out entertaining us in New Orleans singing World War II songs.
And Mr. Silcox, what type of entertainment or dancing or music did you enjoy during that
Well, I
time?
always liked country western and so forth, but I like everything except the hard rock.
Okay.
I can't stand it. And one thing, I got my eardrums bursted when that shell blew up on right beside me. And I can't hear worth they called yet. But when I was in Korea, I had a transoceanic radio. And we couldn't wait for Saturday night to come around to listen to the Grand Ole Opry
Yeah.
and WCKY out of
Cincinnati.
Cincinnati, Ohio, not Wheeling, West Virginia. And then after midnight, the Roosevelt Hotel, the Blue Room, had some good New Orleans music. And that was the best they had. And they had a little bit of all that stuff, but we couldn't understand. But
Okay.
anyhow, we survived it.
All right, good answers. Another question, this is a question for my second block. And one of the things when we were studying that time period, there were some Americans that were very much against us helping out England and France. Charles Lindbergh and Henry Ford, for example, were 2 very famous Americans who thought we should be on the side of the Germans. And what were your feelings about that there were some famous Americans not supporting the war effort?
This was,
We'll start with you.
this was before the war started, though. That was before Pearl
I don't know
Harbor.
exactly what you're talking about, but I've always liked music. And it gets that back to my favorite is gospel music.
Okay. Yeah, my other question I was asking was about there were some Americans that were very much against us helping out the Europeans. And this was, two of the famous ones were Henry Ford and Charles Lindbergh. And did you want to comment on that, Donnie? Did you know much of it?
This was before the war. Senator Burton Wheeler was one particular legislator who was, Senator Burton Wheeler was one particular legislator who was America first kind of mindset, to where we didn't need to be involved in someone else's war. And this was before Pearl Harbor.
There was a change after that, though, wasn't there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Any questions from the audience? Anybody have something? All right, sir, come on up.
I would like to thank you for your service.
Or somebody wanted to say thank you for your service.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you for that. Anybody else like to make a comment or a question? All right, me go on here. Another question was, what arms were you trained in? What were your sidearms? What did you carry certain sidearms? And what weapons were any of you men trained with?
I didn't hear that.
What weapons were you trained with? What weapons were you trained with?
Were you trained with any weapons, or did you carry a sidearm?
No. I was a dry land sailor,
Okay.
so no weapons.
No weapons.
No weapons.
Mr. Silcox? Mr. Noel?
What's the question?
Well, I had a P-38 German Luger, P-38.
You got a German Luger?
Sidearms or anything that you carried
And
or were trained on?
my sidearm really was a M1 carbine, or M2 carbine. That's fully automatic. And that was, I had it fixed where I could carry it on my belt,
Okay.
so I called that my sidearm.
And Mr. Noel, what weapons were you trained in?
No sidearms.
No sidearms?
No, this, the smallest I think we had on the ship was a 20 millimeter. 20 millimeter is almost 3/4 of an inch diameter. And I'm learning of late they called it a cannon. We had 20 millimeters and twin 40s, 40 millimeters. And that was mostly of our type of gun training.
Okay. All right, another question. We'll start with Mr. Cassell. What was your favorite and least favorite part about being in the service? What was your favorite part, and what was your least favorite part about being in the service?
I got the advantage of the GI Bill.
Yes.
That was important. It put me through school.
And the GI Bill was a huge
Well, the GI
asset.
Bill was, the government helped me through college.
As a way of thanking you
Yeah,
for your
that
service.
was, I think, and then they have the VAs around the country to patch us up when we fall apart.
All right, those are
Yeah.
nice.
Every now and then I go up and get patched up.
Okay. What was your least favorite part?
Least favorite thing?
My least favorite was some of the food at Venice.
Okay. All right. Mr. Noel, what was your favorite part about serving, and what was your least favorite part about serving during
What
the
was your
war?
favorite thing about serving and the least favorite?
That is, I haven't been confronted with that question before, and I'm not really sure. Well, it's, the drudgery of being in service probably, in war and in the battle zone, and that's not anything to wake up to in the morning. And we always had good food. I don't know whether we had good cooks or whether it passed had to pass the officer's inspection or what, but we always had good food. Even if we was stationed on a gun, they came around and served us with sandwiches or whatnot. And I couldn't complain on that.
All right.
And some of the probably minuses would be down in the hot engine room in the South Pacific.
A hot engine room in the South Pacific. Mr. Silcox, what was your favorite thing about being in the war and your least favorite thing?
What's your favorite?
Well, looking back on the situation now, was the fact when I got out, I had the GI Bill, I went back to school, and I had the VA hospital as backup insurance, in which the VA hospital, I have had better medical service and professional use out of than I've ever had in my life. And I had, my mother was RN nurse, sister was RN nurse, my ex-wife was RN nurse, so I started to come up in the medical
Y'all
end
were
of it.
pleased with the benefits that y'all got?
And with my job in Korea was also tied with the medical. But the encouragement for the young ones out here, if your parents can afford to send you to college, go. If they can't, it puts you in a bind, is join the service of some kind, and in contracting with them when you sign up would be tell them what you want to do, and they'll get you in a field that in your training, after basic training, and that schooling is paid for 100%. So it takes a big relief off of parents. My parents didn't have money enough to send us into school. My sister was RN, and she got hers at the Catawba Hospital and the University of Virginia. And she worked in 4 different hospitals up until she died. But the benefits from being in the service can't be beat. So it's something to think about. And that's sacrificing 2 to 4 years of your life now to find out what you want to do. Because there's not one of you out there knows what you really want to be. And be that when you get up to that age. I know I've been there. I had 2 boys myself. They were there, and all I've ever talked to didn't know what they wanted when they got out of high school. And they graduated from this school right here, along with 4 grandchildren and 2 more on the way. Thank you.
Anybody have a question before we conclude our assembly? All right. Would you give these men applause for their